Hey guys, Sean from the Movement Guide here. So I got a few questions yesterday following the first video that I posted up. I'm going to try and get through all of these questions for the foreseeable future until the questions get too many that I'll just pick the best ones. So the first question, it comes from a guy called Jacob, and he said, I'll paraphrase here, do you think there is value in doing a standard 5 minutes of cardio before strength training, which is pretty common? Or is it a total waste of time because it's not specific enough and you could do other things instead, such as tissue work and mobility drills? He's heard Poliquin saying that treadmill before workout is a stupid idea because it's not specific and it decreases insulin sensitivity. And do I do any cardio myself? Okay, so firstly, let's say what insulin sensitivity is for people who might not know. Okay, so insulin sensitivity is the relationship between how much insulin you need to release or produce rather, to deposit a certain amount of glucose into your body. So you're insulin sensitive if a small amount of insulin is needed to store X amount of glucose, and you're insulin resistant, which is bad, if you need a lot of insulin to deposit the same amount of glucose into the body. Okay, so the problem with being insulin resistant is that eventually you can actually, oh wow, okay, dogs and drinks and coffee and amazing. Thank you, baby. And Brazilian booty. Great. So hopefully my word's going to get better for you now. I've got some coffee as well. Okay, so the problem with being insulin resistant, besides getting fat, is you're more likely to be you're closer to getting things like type 2 diabetes and other major health problems like that. Okay, so we actually want to fix that. I agree with Poliquin. I think it is a waste of time, especially depending what your training is. So, for example, if you are going to be doing running, it can help you, I suppose, if you did 4 or 5 minute steady pace jog to loosen up and prepare for the movement. So if you're going onto a pitch or something and you're doing any track and field. But I think there's other more valuable things you could do. If you haven't got much of a knowledge on these sort of things, then yes, okay, a little bit of running wouldn't hurt you. But you could look at neural facilitation. You could try and prep the nervous system. You could open up ranges of motion that you're going to need for what the specific activity will be on track and field. So this is where mobility and soft tissue work comes in. I'm not a big fan of soft tissue work, like rolling and trigger point work before training. Maybe a bit of like flossing for certain areas. So for example, if you want to get more range out of your squat, your IT band, TFL, vastus lateralis, or quads, stretching your calves in between heavy squats. If you want a more bigger vertical jump, vertical leap, horizontal, whatever, I'd stretch out the hip flexors until they release off. If you want to transition easier in your muscle up, look at triceps to see that they're not so tight that they're actually restricting range of motion. So these are some things that you could do tissue work wise. Mobility wise, I happen to agree this is much better. Personally, before I do any cardio, I will do things like diagonal stretch, single leg good mornings, very low volume, more towards intensity, and I'll do a couple of leaping and bounding drills to try and get the nervous system working and to grease the groove. And I use a few elements from Wushu for the arms and drive, and I do lots of arm circles to get the shoulder capsule open and loose, so there's no restriction in the range there, because the arms are a powerful mechanism in running. So yes, I agree with Poliquin. Do other things. If you don't have the knowledge, find out. If you really don't want to find out, then running won't kill you, no. Bonus question, I didn't do cardio for a long time. I did other things. I would fight or some stuff like that, dance. Now, based on my goals, I will get, and now that I'm stopping traveling, I can be somewhere more consistently. I will fight again more. BJJ is great, grappling work, Roman Greco, any striking work. Capoeira is always fun, Florio, but it's not super specific to me, so maybe some BJJ and some striking work. And based on my goals now, I do run twice a week. It is a skill. It is a pattern that you need to learn, and depending how intensely you want to go, it is something that you have to prepare the body towards to avoid things like stress fractures and other problems, and also to even out good running technique. When you're an old man like me, you don't just want to beat your body into the ground. You want to make sure you're using it sensibly. So I do different types of running. I don't just do the same thing. I don't do long steady state. There's more useful ways to increase performance, whether it's capacity for distance, speed, however, whatever you like. So this week I did a lactate threshold and an aerobic threshold run. Both were different. One was 7 minutes long, the other one's about half an hour long, and they both will kill you. Okay, second questions. Do you use bands for planche and front lever isometrics other than banded tuck planche and front lever? Because some coaches only use bands for people that can't get into tuck, and some others believe it is good to do band-assisted straddle, full planche, front lever to work muscles at specific joint angles. Allows more lean, for example, and perhaps longer iso holds than going tuck to advanced tuck, etc. Yes, I do use bands for athletes, for sure. For certain stages, I find it can be very useful for cementing a position and feeling it out. Also for in the early stages when you're moving from just starting to get that tuck position, and you want to build up some time in there so you can understand what you're driving with, where you're sitting, how to lock out the elbows, for example. It can be useful with transitioning for press handstand. For front lever, I would never use bands, purely because the only way you can use it for planche is if you are situated directly underneath the band, so there's no change of angle with the pulling direction, purely because these are balancing movements. These are, to a degree, they are dependent on your body's placement. So, for example, a planche, if the band's position around your hips here at the base of my hand, and the top of the bar or the ring is at the fingertips, if I increase this angle, it's going to be pulling me backwards the whole time, which will actually change the angle in my shoulders. It won't allow me to really feel out the movement. So as long as I can maintain completely vertical underneath that, then yes, it's a useful tool. For front lever, there is no real way to do that. If you wanted to have a vertical, you would have to be way out in front of you, and then the assistance is too high. If you wanted to have it vertical on your shoulder line, it'll be right under your shoulders, and it's useless. If you had it angled out, it would be pulling you with greater assistance and backwards in, which would change the shoulder angle again. So no, I don't agree for front lever. If you can't start working a tuck front lever, or can't start preparing for tuck planche with a band, then there are other elements you need to address sooner, like mid-low traps, scapular stability and retraction depression strength, the ability to protract heavily and maintain that protraction with straight arm strength. So this could be a scapular punch movement away from the body and below the body, top supports. This could be planche leans. This could, you got to work on the scalenes, the hyoids, the rotator cuff to make sure it's stable as well. There's a lot to look into there. I've seen it being very useful with maintaining high level strength as well. So you can use full planche light band assists, for example, to maintain a heavier straight arm strength, while you focus on other elements. Very light band assists, there's different ways to use it. It depends on what you're trying to achieve, what's in focus in that cycle, and where the athlete is. And this is assuming you've achieved and you've worked out all the weak details that you need and should work out before you start trying to jump to the next progression. Sorry, I have a bit of a cold. Do you use bands for learning dynamic movements? Example, learning bar muscle up technique. Yes, for one movement. So, and this depends on the athlete. So not for bar muscle ups, but for ring muscle ups, yes. So for ring muscle ups, I typically work without bands first, building a base pattern of transitional strength, false grip pulling, ring dips and stability, full range, great range, build volume in this intensity, and then make sure that the joints and specifically the elbow are all prepared to do this. Then I'll start looking at eccentrics in the person and band assisted muscle ups. just get through that sticking point repeatedly to build an understanding of the pattern off the floor. However, some athletes, they're strong enough. They have the strength, so transition and accumulation work with false grip pulling and ring dips is enough to get them to the muscle up. Then you build up complexity through the ring muscle up, so volume in the ring muscle up, connective tissue health through the muscle up. When you can do enough with quality, a bar muscle up is not too much different, but it requires a greater elbow capacity, in my opinion, and purely a really good false grip on top of the bar. That's for a strict bar muscle up. If you're looking for if you're looking for no false grip muscle ups, that's a lot of strength training. But again, I wouldn't go the band route, because it changes the angle of assistance in directions all over the place. It's not as stable, so I'm not a fan. Finally, the fourth question, for planche and front lever, do you prefer eccentric and concentric movements or mainly isometrics? What should be the focus according to you as a coach? And you'll probably answer, it depends. It depends. For planche and front lever, I use everything. I use bent arm and straight arm elements. I use isolated patterns initially. However, the strength transfer is only about 30 degrees. So in any direction, so it can be pretty useless in those terms. So I will use forced eccentrics to overload in certain cycles. I will use mechanical advantage pulls and presses. I will train press handstand in people as well, and trap 3 presses, trap 3 raises. I will work various elements of it in and out. There is no preference really. It is what you see is the main focus. So if your focus is a planche and front lever, the more stability you have through the scapula in various ranges of motion, the sooner you will get these elements. I know someone, Philip Chubb, he's pretty much used mainly straight arm pressing and bent arm pressing to achieve, I think, a full planche now, if I'm right, Phil. So yeah, it really is. It's basically up to what you see that person needs at that cycle. Again, this comes down to making sure that you manage things from the early stages on, and knowing what the goals are, having a plan of where they're going throughout the year. The macro, the meso, and the micro cycles to consider of what you're trying to achieve in the year, what you're trying to achieve in that quarter, and what you're trying to achieve in that cycle itself. So if you have that in mind, you can actually start to look at what their structural weaknesses and issues are, and start preparing for that. I mean, I got one guy who doesn't, because of a genetic issue, doesn't have the ability to recruit his upper and middle trap, or even his serratus and everything. So his scapula doesn't want to be stable, and there's nothing we can do about it. It's genetic. So we've had to do what we can, and then we've had to develop compensation in a positive way to help him overcome that. So that means playing with different tools with him every cycle to stimulate the growth in the right pathway. And for him, the planche will take a lot longer than anyone else that I know of. It doesn't mean it's impossible. It just means that you need to be observant as a coach and see what you think their issue is and work on that. Okay, so that's all the questions for today. Not everyone will agree with my opinions, but I don't give a fuck. This is what I found to work with people, and yeah, I hope it helped, guys. Send some more questions if you want some more answers. Peace.